What's the juicy drama going on in your workplace? Before we start, welcome back to Reddit Stories Hub. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Here we'll be telling you interesting, thought-provoking stories from Reddit. So get comfortable and let's jump right in. Story 1. My 45-year-old male coworker got caught having an affair with another coworker who is 18. To top it all off, they worked in the back of the building alone together, while his pregnant wife was the receptionist up front. To add insult to injury, the 18-years-old girl had just recently attended the wife's baby shower. Story 2. One of our full-time guys started dating a temporary seasonal worker on the low. The temporary worker says she's moving away once her contract is up. He decides to tag along with her and puts in his 2 weeks. 2 weeks is up, and the seasonal worker suddenly has a change of heart and applies for the full-time position that's now open and ends up getting hired on as a replacement for our full-time guy. Story 3. A friend I used to work with fingered a girl at our Xmas party, in full view of several people. Turns out she was secretly shagging a manager and wanted to make him jealous but got carried away in the process, so he started to kick right off. Also turns out she was only one of 3 girls he was in a secret relationship with, and the other 2 quickly figured out why he was kicking off. Devolved into 2 fights, one between the manager and my friend, and one where the 3 girls were all trying to slap the shit out of each other. Story 4. Boss went out drinking with his 2 favorite pets. He bragged about getting a guy fired that he didn't like and told them who else is on his hit list. What the boss doesn't realize is that his 2 pets are the biggest gossip/snitch, two-faced little whisperers. Hey boss, if someone tattles and gossips to you, it's a guarantee they are also gossiping about you. Story 5. One coworker had a bunch of cash stolen from her purse. Everyone knows who did it. Not only was she the only one not in attendance at a meeting when the money went missing, but she suddenly started avoiding my coworker when they had been friends before that. Also, she would have to know exactly where the purse was stored in order to sneak in and back before being noticed. Now, no one in the office is talking to the alleged thief. That's our version of office justice, since management can't fire her without more proof. Story 6. We thought the coffee pot was dirty. We thought the coffee was bad. We got a new creamer and then new sugar. Hours have been spent trying to figure out what's wrong with our coffee. It's the water. The water. Story 7. A coworker was arrested for having a sexual relationship with a 13-year-old girl. He also assaulted the arresting officer, dislocating the officer's pinky. Last week, another coworker was fired for sexually harassing literally every woman at our plant. Story 8. An assistant got her tits out the Christmas party. They were glorious, and she knew it. She left not long after. It was very much a case of, what happens at the Christmas party stays at the Christmas party, because she came back a few years later as department manager. It was just funny knowing that everyone who had been there over a certain amount of time had seen them, but nobody ever mentioned it. Story 9. Workplace rounders match. Had about 8 teams. Got to the final, and teams started yelling banter, including, "I'm shagging your wife." Turned out a couple guys were shagging the bowler's wife. Bowler bowled the ball at one's head. Giant punch-up ensued. Police were called, and 2 got arrested. Story 10. A friend told me about a pretty juicy one that happened at a Christmas party. One of the co-owner's wives started an argument with one of the secretaries. Nobody he knew heard the start of it, but it was a pretty back-and-forth exchange of insults and increasing volume, till the wife said something like, "I don't know why you're arguing, just freaking admit it, you're shagging my husband." The girl suddenly looked confused and didn't say anything back. Then someone from the back of the room said, "No, she isn't. It's Gary who's shagging him." At which point the man who'd been sat next to the secretary and the co-owner went absolutely bright red and wouldn't look at anyone. The wife had a moment of stunned silence, mumbled an apology to the secretary, and went and sat back down, just staring into space for about 10 minutes, before getting up and calmly, if slightly shakily, walking out. Apparently, Gary never came back in, and a month later, the co-owner sold his portion to the other 2 and moved abroad. I think my favorite bit of it is how my friend ended the story. It was a shame because he was the only one of the 3 that actually knew what the company even did. And that secretary was lucky. because she was shagging one of the other owners, and his wife is actually mental. Story 11. I heard about a couple of guys who were using the Office ID Pass printing machine. They thought it would be funny to take a picture of their private parts and make it into a photo ID. They then pinned it up on a notice board. A coworker saw the pass pinned up and complained to management. One confessed, the other came up with an unlikely sequence of events, including trousers falling down at the wrong time that led to this pass being printed accidentally. The ironic thing was the person who reported them wasn't actually offended. They thought someone else entirely printed it, who they had a grudge against. Once they found out the wrong people were in trouble, they tried to withdraw their complaint. Story 12. I know a woman who worked in a Tesco superstore who found out her partner, who also worked there, was shagging a team manager. So she printed all their rude texts, etc., and placed them all around the staff area for every staff member to see. She got away with it too, as there was nothing in Tesco's HR guidance that they could punish her on at the time. Could tell tons from working in the civil service of all types. More interesting than the one below, which is interesting for the randomness, is when someone dropped a decent-sized bag of cocaine on the escalator, and plenty of people I knew saw it, but couldn't take it as the building staff likely had staff on the camera waiting for the person to pick it up to get nicked. Was a young, large office also, must have been hundreds of staff, looking thinking, do I dare? And a ruined Friday night for one. Story 13. 2 women got into a fight over my father at his and their place of work. A proper fight. He was in a relationship with a woman he worked with, who he'd left my mother for, then cheated on her with another woman he worked with. They didn't directly with together, but were all in the same office for at least part of the week, and all knew each other. He's so not worth it. He's a good father, but relationship-wise, he's the kind of person who'd cheat on a woman with someone from the same office. What's to fight over? At the time, I was volunteering at the office, unemployed and needed a reference, so he suggested and arranged this. And the woman he cheated on was supervising me. I wasn't there for the fight. She never had a problem with me, but it was still very uncomfortable. I liked the first woman. Story 14. I outed an affair by mistake when I was an apprentice. I knew that one of the managers just got married. I got lumped on the end of the table with her at the Christmas meal. Next to her was a bloke from the workshop who I didn't really know either. It was so obvious that they were in a relationship, but I just assumed it was her husband. The next Monday, I said something about getting lumbered with her and her husband. I got told that's not her husband. Her husband is ex. I was like, well, if that's not her husband, they aren't half close. Cue the rumor going around that she's seeing the bloke out of the workshop. A couple of weeks later, she gets divorced from her husband and is pregnant with the other bloke's kid, so they get married to each other. I just remembered another one someone told me about. I didn't witness this. He was an area manager at a decently large company. They had a meeting room which was glass-fronted, but the glass was frosted from about 2 feet up. He walks past and sees 2 pairs of feet directly behind each other. One of the blokes has clearly got one of the women bent over the meeting room desk playing Hide the Sausage. He doesn't know what to do, so he goes and gets another manager before barging in. As they come back, the pair are now sat casually like nothing happened. When questioned, they claimed that he was showing her something on his laptop, and she was bent over the desk to see it better. He was behind her showing her the screen. They both got away with it, as there was no proof that's not what was going on. Story 15. At a work Xmas party one year, one of the apprentices, I think he was about 18/19, had a bit too much to drink. He proceeds to slap one of the girls in HR, who had organized the whole event, then squared up to one of the directors who was old enough to be his dad. Surprisingly, all that happened was he was kicked out of the party, but welcomed back to work on the following Monday without any repercussions for slapping the HR girl. Not surprising, though. A lot worse happened in the 4 years I was there, and not a single person was fired. Story 16. Our ex-delivery driver was seeing a lady who worked as a receptionist at a company we delivered to. The owner of this company also had a soft spot for the receptionist and did not try to hide it. Our driver, trying to be chivalrous, warned the owner of the company to stay away. The owner told our driver to go forth and multiply. Stupidly, the driver took it outside. I was there and witnessed the fight. Our driver pushed the owner a couple of times, and in one foul punch, the owner connected a right cross to the nose of our driver. The driver went down like a sack of spuds. knocked clean out, and a nose at a right angle. Luckily, the ambulance station was directly next door, and a couple of paramedics on a break sorted the driver out. The owner of the company we delivered to called the owner of our company and informed him of what happened. Unfortunately, the driver was fired for gross misconduct, and no charges were brought by any party, although there was a brief police investigation. Story 17. My workplace at the time always attracted younger people. We had 4 or 5 new starters who were 18 or 19. One of the girls was being picked on by the other 4. Something snapped, and she chucked a bottle of water over her. She was quickly fired that day. I don't agree with her actions, but I don't blame her. A manager slept with one of his supervisors. He was in a superior position, but his wife worked elsewhere in the company. It got pretty awkward when we all moved into one office together. Story 18. I work for a very prominent doctor in my city who has a solo practice. His wife is the practice manager. They hired a cute blonde RN in her early 30s, married, to work part-time. I work next to her, and she tells me everything. Doctor proceeds to hit on her in person via intra-office instant messaging and via text. The latter 2 methods caused the wife to take notice. Instead of apologizing for extreme discomfort, this caused the nurse, the wife, progressively and passive-aggressively pushes her out of the practice by gradually reducing her hours, making her keep track of everything she does minute by minute, and generally making her work environment shitty. She's gone now. It worked. Story 19. A woman at my work is lying about having cancer. She comes up with new sicknesses and calls out all the time. She told us she's pregnant with twins and sent us an ultrasound picture. We searched pregnant twins ultrasound on Google, and it was on the first page. It goes so much deeper than this, too. She would send pictures of herself, dead on the hospital table, from the nurse, using her phone, to my direct manager. We don't know what to do. Our bosses are telling us to fire her, but we can't. Every time she calls out, she has a doctor's note. Story 20. 3 people got caught having a threesome. Obviously, it was 3 LOL in a meeting room after hours in the fairly big company I work for. One of them, absolute bitch who always cheats on her husband unless he's a cuck, is still here, and she threatened the girl who walked in and found them. The girl wasn't going to say anything until she threatened her. Been quite a few people shagging here. The prayer room is the local spot. Story 21. Was working in the back office for a major bank. My work bestie had just left for another job, but disclosed to me that she'd started dating someone else in the office. Stuart, not hiding his name. He's a cunt. About 2 weeks later, I'm in training for a new process we were implementing. During our lunch break, the trainer starts going on to me about how she's off for a dirty weekend with her new boyfriend, Stuart. I was confused, but didn't say anything. Texted my work bestie, who disclosed that he'd stayed at hers the night before and was understandably furious. A day later, not being close to the trainer and not wanting to be the bearer of bad news, I approached a mutual friend of the trainer and told her about Stuart dating work bestie. She told the trainer, who immediately went into a tailspin. Meanwhile, work bestie called Stuart to tell him he's a cunt and that it was over. Stuart quickly discovered it was me who had connected the dots and came to my desk to scream at me. During this tirade, he called me a nasty freaking poofter. Being in earshot of our manager, he was immediately suspended and subsequently sacked. The trainer still went on the dirty weekend with him. She refused to believe that any of it was true. We avoided each other like the plague afterward. A few weeks later, I was pushing a trolley around Aldi and accidentally bumped into it against someone I hadn't seen in front of me. It was the middle aisle. I was too busy looking at a 20-pound ice cream maker, looked up, apologized, and realized it was another work colleague. She hadn't seen me because she was kissing her new boyfriend. The new boyfriend was Stuart. Story 22. We once had a phantom shit smearer in my office. The gents' toilets would occasionally end up with shite smeared on the walls and in the floor, handprints and all. Marvelously, it would happen in the middle of the day, and we never caught the dirty, protesting bastard. Reading emails informing that smearing fecal matter in the walls is not appropriate was quite funny, but finding the defaced toilets was not. I feel bad for the cleaners. Hope they got a raise. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.